What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, your hub for everything physical media and entertainment. I am Ken, and today, guys, I am here because you guys asked for it. You guys requested it. Last week, I talked about some movies, some Blu-rays and 4K, some horror titles in my collection that I think you need to have in your collection. You guys said, hey, Ken, why don't you do that again? Why don't you do that a couple more times this spooky season? So I am here again for part 2 of this new series, part 2 of the horror Blu-rays and 4Ks that you need to have in your collection. I've got another banger stack of horror titles that I think you should watch this spooky season. Of course, we've got so much to watch, guys. We've got shelves full of movies. We got streaming services full of movies, but sometimes it helps just to have somebody point a movie out to you and say, hey, you need to watch this movie, and then you do, and there's just nothing better than getting a good recommendation from somebody, watching it and loving the movie, and there's nothing better for me than to give a good recommendation. Then you guys say you really love it, and then I get that feedback. I love that. That's why I do this channel, guys. So I love doing videos like this. But before we get into it, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We talk about physical media on this channel every single day. So if you like that kind of thing, hit the subscribe button. Also comment down below, guys, what do you think of my picks here today? And if you got any other recommendations for me, let me know in the comment section below. So like I said, this is part 2, horror Blu-rays and 4Ks you need to have in your collection. So you know the sequel is going to be bigger, it's going to be badder, it's going to be better, the body count's going to be bigger for sure. I actually don't know that. Maybe more people died in these movies than the first round that I did last week. Who knows? But we are going to start with a camp slasher flick. And this is from Vinegar Syndrome. And this is a 4K release of Madman from 1981. So this one was actually a first-time watch for me. I'd never seen Mad Men. I bought it recently on a sale for 18 bucks in the Vinegar Syndrome sale. So I don't know what this goes for right now. Probably 26, 27 bucks. Maybe a little bit cheaper if you get it without the slipcover. So if you don't care about the cardboard or anything like that, maybe do that. But this was an incredibly fun slasher flick. Just cheesy early 80s camp slasher goodness. Clearly inspired by the Friday the 13th craze. But I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. I was very impressed with the actual villain of the film, the Madman himself. I actually think that the Madman could take Jason in a fight. And I love the whole thing with the axe, how it was in the stump and he had to pull it out like an Excalibur. Nobody else could pull it out but the Madman. I thought that was pretty cool. But just the way that they show the Madman in this movie, just all throughout the film, they show him in all his glory at the end. But throughout the film, like, you're just getting these little like glimpses of him, and they're not lingering on his face for too long. They're kind of showing it from the POV perspective for most of the movie, but you get these little shots throughout, and just the way that they show it and the way that they portray the Madman is just very jarring and actually pretty effective and creepy and scary. So I did enjoy that quite a bit. There's some good gore, there's some really good kills. Just a really fun movie that I honestly enjoyed far more than I was expecting to. The performances are very cheesy, definitely. You know, you don't really expect too much out of the people acting in these movies. You don't expect the greatest performances of all time by any means, but they were perfectly serviceable for this type of film. There is a lovemaking scene though in this movie that feels very out of place for this type of film. I don't know what the director was thinking, but it's all like sweet and tender, and the music, there's like this romantic music. It's nothing like a traditional like camp slasher sex scene, and I'll just say that. It's very over the top and elaborate, and I just don't think it was necessary at all. It's in a hot tub, and it's yeah. But Madman's really good. This has some great special features on it as well. And totally worth it. Like, if you haven't got Madman on 4K, it looked great on 4K as well. Absolutely fantastic. Definitely an under-the-radar camp slasher flick. And next one up, guys, you guys are probably going to roll your eyes at this one. This is an A24 film. I watched this last year. I really enjoyed it. Bodies, bodies, bodies. And I was expecting to roll my eyes at this film myself and just be like, oh, this is stupid Gen Z crap, you know, a movie that I'm just way too old for. But I actually thought this was a really compelling, like, mystery thriller whodunit with a little bit of slasher elements sprinkled throughout. But the reason I really love this movie was the score, because Disasterpiece does the score to this movie, and it's fantastic, and they're the same ones that did the music for It Follows. So it has a real vibe to it and a real atmosphere and just some great performances. And Pete Davidson's in this movie, and I know he can be annoying at times, but I actually thought he was really good in this film. It's just a really good mystery. I thought it was very compelling. I was trying to guess like what was actually going on throughout the entire film, and then when you find out what's going on, it's so ridiculous and out of left field that you just roll with it. But I really love this movie a lot. It was actually my top 10 favorite movies of 2022. And I know not a lot of people like this one, but I really did. And I think that if some people were being negative about it and maybe, you know, threw you off of not wanting to watch it, I'd say give it a shot. You know, it's only like 90 minutes. Give it a shot. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I think it's a banger. I think it's a good time. So check it out for sure. And this is one of my all-time favorite films. This is one of my all-time favorite Robert Zemeckis films. This is Death Becomes Her. And this is the Blu-ray Scream Factory edition. Now, as I'm talking about this, I feel like I might have talked about this last time I did this video. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of something else, but maybe I talked about it with my wife recently on a live stream. But Death Becomes Her. I feel like I've talked about this a lot though, but Robert Zemeckis directed this. Bruce Willis, it's one of his best performances. I love him in this movie. Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn. If you haven't seen Death Becomes Her, it's super fun. It's a supernatural horror thriller movie, and it's really cool. So if you haven't seen Death Becomes Her, check it out. Really awesome. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and I got this awesome steelbook. And to be honest, I just wanted to show off this steelbook because I think it's one of the best in my collection. And this is a 4K steelbook of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So you got the 4K, you got the Blu-ray, and all that goodness. Inside, what is this? Oh, that's the ad for the books. But this is really fun. I saw this in the theaters, and then I bought this 4K. And my daughter actually really likes this film. She watches it a lot. Not a lot anymore, but she watched it a lot after she watched it for the first time. She was watching it for like weeks after. And we actually try to watch it every Halloween now. So this is a really fun, creepy movie. This is directed by Andre Overdale, who also did Autopsy of Jane Doe. He just did Last Voyage of the Demeter. He did Troll Hunter. So really good director. And of course, this is based on the books. And I remember reading the books when I was a kid. But I thought this was very effective, and it's PG, so it's kind of for kids, but it feels more mature. And it's just really good. I think it's super solid. If you didn't watch this one, it's definitely a step above like a Goosebumps or something like that. But like the Goosebump movies with Jack Black, like I wouldn't put it in the same class. It's actually kind of creepy and very effective for what it does. Being a PG rating, I think it's actually pretty damn scary. So Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, I recommend it. It's a good movie. And it's, you know, it's not an anthology. It's kind of set up kind of like an anthology. You would think it was, but it's all the same characters throughout, just going through like different parts of the book throughout the film. So really good movie though. The Shining, of course I got to throw in a heavy hitter. The Shining is just one of the greatest horror movies of all time. It's my second favorite horror movie of all time. I love this, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Masterful direction, based on a Stephen King book. Stephen King notoriously hates this movie because what Stanley Kubrick did, the changes he made to Jack Torrance's character. But I think it works for this movie, and I just think Jack Nicholson gives one of the all-time best performances, and it's so creepy, it's so effective, has such atmosphere, great performances, great direction, and it's just one of the greatest films of all time, just beyond the horror genre, but it's a great horror film as well, The Shining. If you didn't get this one on 4K yet, it looks freaking awesome on 4K, so definitely get that. I'm going to go ahead and throw out two at once. Let's talk about the VHS movies. I love both of these movies. Now, I do love, I think, VHS 2 just a little bit more because I think that all the segments in the second one hit. Now, there is only 4 segments in the second one. There's 5 segments in the first. Now, the first sequence in the first one, the siren, that one is freaking awesome and maybe the best of the entire franchise to me. And the last segment in this one, that the haunted house, is freaking spectacular as well. Beyond that, the rest of them are okay. There's one with like a glitch in a forest. It's like a slasher kind of thing. And I think that one's pretty good. But the other ones are kind of forgettable in this one. Whereas VHS 2 is like all bangers from start to finish. The zombie bicycler, the cult stuff, the Asian cult stuff, the UFO stuff at the very end, the opening one with the eye, which is actually stars Adam Wingard, who directed You're Next and The Guest and all that. He actually stars in the first segment in this one. But VHS 2 is freaking awesome. It's one of the best found footage movies. These are both found footage anthology films. I guess I should have set that up first if you guys didn't know, but They're both spectacular. Two of my all-time favorite found footage movies. I like the new VHS movies. I think 94 and what are the two? 94, VHS 94 and VHS 99. That's right. I think they're getting ready to do 85 or 84 or something. But I think the new VHS movies are very solid. They're definitely better than Viral. But as far as VHS goes, you cannot beat the first two. And I don't think these Blu-rays are very much at all. I think this Blu-ray right here was on Hamilton Books for like $5 or $6. And this was on Amazon, still with the slipcover for $10. So you can still get both of them for pretty cheap. But again, I'll link all these down below in the description. Whatever the best prices I can find, I will link them down below. Speaking of You're Next, You're Next is one of the best modern day slasher home invasion films that there is. The lead actress in this movie, I think her name is Sharni Vinson. It makes me mad because it's like, this is the only movie I know her from. Maybe she did some other ones, but like, she should have went on to be like a huge genre star, like Maca Monroe. And it didn't feel like she did anything after this, but she is so incredible in this movie. I think she's an Australian actress. So freaking good in this movie. And Barbara Crampton's in this film as well. Just a great cast, and it's super thrilling, and it's kind of like a whodunit as well. Kind of a mystery. You're kind of wondering what's going on, and stuff gets revealed all throughout the movie. It's super gory, super bloody, and it's just fantastic. If you haven't seen Your Next, directed by Adam Wingard, it is awesome. I would love somebody to do a special edition of this movie. Second Sight, you did The Guest. Adam Wingard's The Guest. Do Your Next. Scream Factor, I don't care who does it. Vinegar Syndrome, somebody do Your Next, and like immediately. Somebody do a 4K of this immediately. I love Your Next. I want to watch it tonight. Damn it. All right, let's pull out another heavy hitter. We got some heavy hitters in there, guys. Look, I know that most of the people watching have probably heard of these big horror movies like The Shining and the one that I'm getting ready to mention, and Poltergeist and the thing I talked about last week. But maybe somebody out there hasn't. Maybe they haven't watched these movies and they need somebody to sell them on them to finally get them to watch it. And I'm willing to be that person here today and talk about American Werewolf in London on 4K. I've got this, with a nice clear plastic case on it because I love it so much. It has to be protected at all costs. But American Werewolf in London is my favorite werewolf movie. It's got the greatest, I don't care what anybody says, it's got the greatest transformation scene of any werewolf movie. And it's so freaking effective and so freaking disgusting, and just everything about it is fantastic. And the performances in this movie, Jenny Agutter, David Naughton, you got freaking Griffin Dunne in this movie, are all fantastic. And it's a romance movie, it's a comedy, it's a scary as hell horror film, it's a creature feature, it's so many different things in one. John Landis just balances all those different genres so perfectly. And yeah, I just think it's one of the greatest horror movies of all time. If you haven't seen American Werewolf in London, you have to watch it this Halloween season. This one I just watched with my wife, and we probably should have by now reviewed it on our channel. So I'll link that channel down below, Married with Media. I do it with my wife. We talk about movies and TV. We do reviews and stuff on that channel. So if you want to check that out, again, the link is down below. But we just watched Joyride. And this was not a first time watch for me. I watched this all the time, like when I was a teenager, and I loved it. It's got Paul Walker, it's got Steve Zahn, it's got Layli Sobieski, and I probably said that name wrong, but she was kind of hot for a very short amount of time, but she was like in everything, it felt like, in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I used to call her Helen Hunt Jr. because she really looks like Helen Hunt. But yeah, Paul Walker, rest in peace, Paul Walker, Steve Zahn, great chemistry in this movie. I think this movie holds up. I still like it. It's a really cool action thriller. I would say it's definitely a horror movie. There's so many horror elements throughout this whole film. Even if you want to say it's a thriller, suspense thriller, whatever, I think it's definitely got enough horror elements to classify it and put it on this list. But yeah, Joyride is super awesome. And it was also written by J.J. Abrams, which I didn't realize until I just rewatched it. And it's produced by J.J. Abrams as well. So this is just a really cool movie. It's an on-the-road, thriller. They mess with this truck driver, and they play a joke on him, a practical joke, and then it comes back to bite him in the ass because he comes after them. He chases them in his semi-truck. So it's a very effective thriller, and I still think it's great. And I would love for like Second Sight or somebody to do like a 4K special edition of this because I think it deserves it. But Joyride is awesome. If you haven't seen that, definitely check that out. Alligator from Scream Factor. I've talked about this one numerous times, but I think this is an awesome like Jaws type creature feature adventure horror movie. Just replace Jaws with an alligator, And that's what you have here with Alligator. There's a scene where he like bursts out of the sewer and while all these kids are like playing baseball on the street, and it's super awesome. And this 4K looks great. So highly recommend Alligator. And there's a special feature in this with Bryan Cranston that's 30 minutes long because this is the first movie that Bryan Cranston ever worked on. So he came back to do a 30-minute interview talking about this film. And it's got Robert Forster in it. So RIP Robert Forster. And he's great as well. Just a really, really fun movie, really effective movie. Brutal scenes in it as well, where the alligator's like ripping people apart, and I love it. I think Alligator is fantastic. 4K looks great as well. In the Mouth of Madness is probably the most underrated John Carpenter movie to me. Nobody, literally nobody talks about this movie. Unless you're in the film community, physical media community, then you hear some people talk about this movie. Nobody else talks about this film in like mainstream. It's a supernatural, Lovecraftian mind F of a movie. It's got some great practical effects. Like you can see that John Carpenter took everything that he learned from The Thing and applied it to this movie. There's some very, very creepy, effective, practical effect makeup sequences throughout this film. And it's got Sam Neill in it, and he's freaking awesome. So In the Mouth of Madness, the most underrated John Carpenter movie to me. Definitely check this one out. It's so worth it. The Scream Factory title is awesome. I wish they would upgrade this to 4K. We got 3 titles left, guys. Let's talk about Suspiria, the remake. I love the original, directed by Dario Argento. I don't think you can beat the original. That just has such a vibe, such a flavor to it, such a spark and energy to that film that it's almost impossible to replicate it. And they didn't try to replicate it here. They tried to make something totally different. They took the same premise, the same type of story, but they did something totally different with it. Dakota Johnson in this movie is freaking awesome. I would say that the performances in this movie outweigh the performances in the first one by far. Just some great, spectacular performances in this film. I think Mia Goth is also in this movie. Tilda Swinton. Dakota Johnson is just stunning in this film, and just her performance and her beauty as well. It's just, she is so freaking good on all levels. There's a scene with this woman that gets contorted, and it's crazy what happens. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's just this really memorable scene where there's a lot of cracking and breaking and contorting, and it's very effective. I'll just say that. But it's really long movie too. It's like 2 hours and 30 minutes, so it's way longer than the original. But again, like I said, same premise, but they take that premise and they start to do kind of the same things as the first one did, and then they just go in a completely different wild ass direction with it. So this is what you should do with a remake. You take the premise of the original, you do something completely different and make it your own. And that's what the Suspiria remake did. You know, directed by Luca Guadagnino, who also just did Bones and All, and he did Call Me By Your Name, which was nominated for Best Picture. So really well-directed film, Suspiria, the remake. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking this one out. If you're into like super, like this isn't an A24 film, but it does feel very A24. So definitely know that going in. It's very artsy, but it's super effective, super scary, creepy. And yeah, I love it. The score is great as well. The score in the original, again, you can't top it, but I think Tom York did the score, and it's freaking fantastic. I love it. So let's talk about the Amityville Horror remake with Ryan Reynolds. So I have this on Blu-ray. I would love for like Arrow Video to do this in 4K like they did Last House on the Left. I think it deserves it, and it would be a really cool addition to put out. Looking on the side, I think MGM has this one, so it would be in line for them to put out, I think. So that would be really cool. If Vinegar Syndrome did it as well, and they could match it with this title, the original Amityville Horror, which I'm recommending as well. And I do, look, I recommend watching these both. This is another remake that I think is very slept on from this era of remakes. And it's not the greatest thing ever, and I'm not saying it's better than the original. But Ryan Reynolds in this movie is very good in just how he turns his personality. It's very Jack Torrance, how he shifts his personality throughout this film from loving father to just straight up asshole. Is very believable, and it's really awesome. And this was in the era where Ryan Reynolds was still kind of a comedic actor. He was doing a ton of comedies at this time. And so when he did some of his stuff and said some of the things that he said in this movie, I remember thinking it was very funny, but it's also kind of effective as well and kind of scary. So I think the Amityville Horror remake is very slept on. And I think that more people need to check this one out if you missed it. I think it came out in 2005. But look, the GOAT is the original. Amityville Horror with Josh Brolin. Margot Kidder is freaking spectacular. This 4K from Vinegar Syndrome is just one of my favorites in my entire collection. You got tons of new special features here. You have the old Scream Factory special features. Just tons of stuff going on with this Amityville Horror 4K, and it looks fantastic on 4K as well. So yeah, that's my last two. The Amityville Remake with Ryan Reynolds and Melissa George, and the Amityville Horror original, which you can probably get on Vinegar Syndrome website. I don't think you can get the slipcover still, but I think it's maybe, you know, 25, 26 bucks right now. So I'll try to link that down below, but it's probably on Amazon without the slipcover. So whatever I can find the best prices, I will link down below in the description. So I hope you enjoyed part 2 of my spooky recommendations. I'm just going over to the shelf at this point, guys, and just grabbing stuff off, some scary titles that I like, and sharing them with you guys. So I hope you enjoy it. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on the bell notifications for all future videos, and follow me on all my social media accounts. Those links are down below in the description, and we'll see you next time.